Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Livia Wagner, and I'm going to be the host or the moderator for this side event about environmental crime in the Amazon Basin. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this very important event about environmental crime. And the connection between environmental crimes such as illegal gold mining, illegal logging, and related illicit activities such as illicit financial flows have increasingly been evident in recent years. So this form of organized crime is affecting not only the indigenous communities and the world's largest rainforest, the Amazon Basin, but also communities around the world. And therefore, we believe that it's of utmost importance to find viable and comprehensive solutions to that. Today, we're going to discuss the criminal actors involved, preventive strategies and responses from governments, civil society, and indigenous communities. As you may know, civil society organizations present in the region, they have advocated for the law enforcement agencies to address environmental crime as an organized crime form, and they have carried out studies with the intent to better understand the criminal dynamics, but also to more effectively disrupt the criminal markets perpetrating this environmental crime form, and also, of course, associated crimes, for instance, financial nature crimes. It's my great pleasure, as I was saying today, to moderate this side event here, which is going to have short presentations from 3 experts on environmental crime trends in the Amazon Basin. It's our great pleasure to also have here our partner organizations, the UNUCPR. I'm going to introduce Adam in a few seconds, and also the Permanent Mission of Peru to the UN. We also do offer the service of simultaneous interpretation from Spanish to English. So you can just click on the world symbol at the right bottom, and we will also have the opportunity for questions from the floor. So please feel free to already put some questions into the chat box now, and we will address after the 3 presentations. But before we move to the presentations, it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Adam Day, who is going to open the panel. Dr. Adam Day is Director of Programs at the United Nations University Center for Policy Research in New York. And in this role, he oversees current research projects and the development of new programs. So prior to the UN, Dr. Day served for a decade in the UN, focusing on peace operations, political engagement in conflict settings, mediation, and protection of civilians. He served as senior political advisor to MONUSCO, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in the UN Special Coordinator's Office for Lebanon, amongst others. He has written several publications in the areas of international criminal law, head of state immunity for international crimes, and rule of law in post-conflict settings. Dr. Day holds a Juris Doctor from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law, a master's in law and diplomacy from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, a master's in comparative literature from Brown University, and a doctorate from King's College London War Studies Department. So many thanks again to all the people who are joining us across the world, and welcome to Adam for framing the discussion, and the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Livia, and I will be very short because I'm really excited to hear the presentations. Really just to add my welcome on behalf of UN University's Center for Policy Research. We're really delighted to be a co-sponsor of this event and a partner of the Global Initiative and CPO on this work related to organized environmental crime. And I think for those of us who've worked in areas of high levels of criminality and violent forms of governance, really the starting point for this talk is going to be quite intuitive. When I was working in Eastern Congo, the illicit networks that exploited timber and gold and minerals across Congo's borders were clearly part of a broader dynamic that fed armed groups and stripped the state of key revenues and contributed to violence. And similarly in South Sudan, when I was working there, we could easily see how illicit deforestation and the timber trade help sustain violent groups there. But I think one of the most important areas where criminality overlaps with environmental degradation is the Amazon Basin, and it's also an area where we don't know enough. How do illicit networks benefit from large-scale deforestation? How does this feed cycles of violence and predatory governance? What are the different roles of state and non-state actors in these processes? And really, how should we respond? And I think the answer to these questions are not just important for the Amazon basin, they have a much broader application to other parts of the world that may face similar dynamics. They overlap with our work on illegal arms trade, human trafficking, sanctions, and obviously climate adaptation. And so I think today's speakers really offer us an important insight into a cluster of issues that will affect international work on corruption and on peace and security, on addressing global impacts of environmental destruction. They're all areas where UN University is really interested in supporting better policy responses and more effective multilateralism. So I'm really looking forward to the presentations and the discussion today. I hope it's a launching pad for future collaborations. And I'd like to just give the floor back to Livia so we can get straight into these really interesting presentations. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your remarks. And as you mentioned, I think it's really important that we are getting together all the different actors, and this is what is necessary to have a comprehensive response from the different actors, not only in the affected countries, but also from other countries around the world. It's now my pleasure to turn to our first speaker, Mayara Foley from Plataforma CIPO, who is also co-organizing this event with us. And she will speak about the environmental crime in the Amazon Basin, and more specifically about illegal gold mining in the Amazon Basin. So Mayara Foley, welcome. And just a few words on you. Mayara is the co-founder and program director of Plataforma CIPO, which is a Brazil-based think tank that focuses on environmental crime. Just a second. I need to. That focuses on issues of climate governance and international peace and security. Mayara holds a master's degree from the Department of International Development at the University of Oxford and a degree in international relations from the Pontifical Católica University of Rio de Janeiro. Welcome again, Mayara. Thank you very much for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Livia, for the kind introduction. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today. As Livia said, I'm Mayara Foley from Plataforma CIPO, one of the co-sponsors of today's events alongside UNUCPR and the Global Initiative. As Livia has already anticipated, today I'll be speaking to you about environmental crimes as organized crimes, with a particular focus on illegal gold mining in the Brazilian Amazon. So firstly, I will provide an overview of the drives of environmental crimes linked to the illegal gold chain in the Amazon. Secondly, I will briefly talk about the actors involved in this business. Thirdly, I will address the range of illicit activities associated with environmental crimes, including violent crimes, but also crimes of financial nature. And finally, I'll mention some of the key impacts of illegal gold mining in the Amazon. So what has been driving illegal gold extraction in the Amazon over the past few years? So firstly, I'd say a significant rise in both the demand and in the price of gold on international markets, particularly since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Brazil's export of gold, for instance, has increased by 34% in 2020 compared to 2019. And those exports have remained very high in 2021, when the country exported over 100 tons of gold. And it's worth mentioning that on a very conservative estimate, at least a third of the gold exported by Brazil comes from illegal origin, especially from mines in the Amazon. And this map here on your screen shows the main illegal mines in the Amazon. You can see they are mainly concentrated around the Yanomami, Munduruku, and Kayapó communities, who over the past few years especially have faced an increased number of invasions of their land by illegal gold diggers. From 2010 to 2020, the area occupied by illegal garimpos, as we call, which was meant to be small-scale mining operations, they grew by nearly 500% within indigenous land, and by 300% in the case of conservation units. In those areas, by the way, it's illegal to have any extraction of gold. And so in addition to the high demand and prices, I'd say that another key driver of illegal mining in Brazil recently relates sadly to the favorable political environment under which illegal gold diggers are operating. At present, they benefit from a presidential discourse that strongly encourages the legalization of gold mining activities in protected areas, and also from a federal government that has been weakening key aspects of Brazil's legislation for the protection of the environment. And in addition, perpetrators benefit from record levels of impunity that result, among many other aspects, from the dismantling of environmental institutions, which over the past 3 to 4 years have faced severe budget and personnel cuts, which in turn is resulting in a stark reduction of field inspections to combat environmental crimes, and also the mechanisms to provide sanctions and fines against those who were found to have committed environmental crimes. They have become next to unoperational in recent years. And finally, it's worth noting that Brazil's gold chain, in addition to these more recent challenges, this chain has been historically marked by little transparency, no tracing, and next to no monitoring. It's extremely easy to do what we call warm-up gold. So in other words, the illegal origin of gold can very easily be masked to give the appearance that it comes from an illegal mine. And this happens for a range of factors, but mainly because Brazil's law presumes the good faith of the buyer and the seller. So in practice, if someone arrives in an authorized commercial store and self-declares that the gold that they are trying to sell comes from a legal source, there's next to no mechanism to verify whether this is the case or not. And at this point, the gold already enters the market with a legal appearance. And it's needless to say that this creates a perfect environment for the sale of illegally extracted gold to thrive. And so who is directly involved and who is facilitating such activities? I won't be able to go through all the actors, but I'd like to just highlight a few. These actors include lobby groups who are constantly pressuring for the flexibilization of environmental protection rules. It involves local and national politicians who either profit directly from illegal gold extraction or receive, for instance, campaign donations from those operating in the gold chain. It includes private jet companies that, of course, are essential to transport the heavy machinery, equipment, and personnel involved in gold extraction. It's estimated that a single company with one jet available makes around $2,000 in profit per week, and they, of course, benefit from a loose regulation of the airspace by the Brazilian Army, especially, and the Air Force. And finally, you have very high-profile criminal organizations getting increasingly involved with the gold sector, including the PCC, which is Brazil's most powerful criminal organization, involved in activities such as drugs, arms trafficking, among many other things. So in the words of a Brazilian prosecutor working in the Amazon, he says, "The gold business is the best way to launder money in Brazil. It is unsurprising that PCC is operating in illegal mines. Not only the PCC, but any criminal organization profiting from illegal activities who wishes to justify the increase in their assets, all they have to do is to start operating in the gold sector." So it is unsurprising that in this extremely lucrative business that benefits from high level of impunities, that this becomes a very fertile ground for all sorts of criminal activities that includes corruption, bribery of public officials who in the first place were meant to be deterring such crimes. You have money, code and asset laundering, fraud, tax evasion, among many other financial crimes. They are accompanied by, as Adam was saying in the beginning, violent crimes as well, and which includes from human to arms trafficking, sexual exploitation, forced labor, threats and intimidation, physical violence, and even lethal violence, especially against those who are opposing those activities. And finally, to conclude, I'll briefly mention some of the impacts caused by this illegal extraction of gold, which includes, but of course are not limited to, deforestation and their associated greenhouse gas emissions that have a direct impact upon the global climate, soil erosion and degradation, contamination of rivers, fish, and the atmosphere by mercury used in the process of gold extraction. By way of example, research from reputable scientific agencies have found that nearly all Yanomami and Munduruku communities, which you might remember, the lands of those communities have been invaded by illegal gold diggers, as I've displayed in a map I showed earlier. Almost all of them have been intoxicated by mercury. In other words, they are exposed to levels of mercury that are higher than those deemed safe by the World Health Organization. And finally, as I mentioned before, local communities and those co-opted to do the hard work of gold extraction. So sometimes those who have no option other than engaging in such activities because of lack of income, job opportunities, etc. They face all sorts of human rights violation, including forced labor, sexual exploitation, among others. So to conclude, these were some of the consequences of having criminal groups operating with increasing levels of sophistication and also benefiting from a highly profitable environment where impunity is very high. So that's it from me. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Mayara, for your excellent presentation and also for providing an overview of the different actors in illegal gold mining in Brazil and related illicit activities, and how the illegal mining can be a vehicle to launder money from other illicit activities. Our organization, the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, we also had the opportunity to conduct some research in the Amazon Basin countries, specifically in Peru and in Colombia, on the issue of illegally mined gold and how this ecosystem is in dear need of a comprehensive response. So we have heard that there is a range of actors and that it's a challenge for some countries to find the right responses, although there are very active civil society organizations and also from the indigenous community groups. So it's now my pleasure also in view of that, it's my pleasure to take you to Lima, Peru, where our next speaker, Cesar Ipenza, is based, and he will present on environmental crime challenges in the Peruvian part of the Amazon Basin and the legal responses there. Cesar Augusto Ipenza is an independent expert and lawyer, and he is also a GI-TOC network member, specializing in environmental issues. He has a master's degree in protected areas and public management and specializations in environmental law and environmental policy and conservation biology. He has been advisor to the First Minister of the Environment of Peru and is a member of various Peruvian state bodies. He has researched and worked on artisanal and small-scale gold mining, protected areas, environmental law, and has published articles and books on environmental and sustainability issues, both nationally and internationally. He has also investigated environmental crimes, particularly illegal logging and illegal mining. And he has also received important awards, such as the first place in the Alexander Kiss World Prize, awarded by the IUCN Environmental Law. Muchas gracias, Cesar, and welcome, and the floor is yours.
Muy buenos días o muy buenas tardes donde se encuentren. Para mí es un placer. Muchísimas gracias, Lidia, por la invitación. Y cuando queríamos, o de alguna manera cuando abordamos el tema de minería ilegal, no podemos dejar de mencionar que la pandemia ha acrecentado la comisión de este delito en la Amazonía. Yo particularmente soy amazónico y vemos cómo este delito se ha vinculado a otros delitos que a veces son invisibles, pero también las políticas públicas y los diversos intereses de nuestros gobernantes hacen que se facilite la comisión de este delito. Para mí, el más grave, el complejo, que lleva a generar diversos efectos sobre este gran ecosistema que es la Amazonía. Además, el contexto del COVID y el tema de la inestabilidad económica ha llevado a un incremento del precio del oro. Yo recuerdo que a inicios de la pandemia, la proyección de oro estaba sobre los $1,600 la onza y llegó a superar los $2,000 la onza de oro en ese contexto, ¿no? Y además, en el Perú, de alguna manera hemos venido enfrentando esta lucha de larga data. Recuerdo desde el año 2002, tenemos un marco jurídico para enfrentar la minería informal y llevarla a ser legal y formal, pero esto no ha funcionado por diversas razones. Desde la inteligencia financiera se han realizado evaluaciones sobre el tema de minería, particularmente de minería informal, y uno de nuestros últimos resultados nos muestra, por ejemplo, que entre los años 2007 y 2019, la Unidad de Inteligencia Financiera reportó informes de inteligencia financiera por 5.890 millones de dólares, que supera largamente lo que vincula al tráfico ilícito de drogas, ¿no? Y solo entre febrero del 2018 y enero del 2019 se identificaron 1.401 millones de dólares que involucran la minería ilegal particularmente. Esto no es extraño tampoco en la región. El año pasado, Gafilat, el Grupo de Acción Financiera de Latinoamérica, me contrató para hacer un informe sobre lavado de activos y minería ilegal, al ser un delito emergente en América Latina, ¿no? Y vemos que las cifras cada día cobran mayor relevancia en la región. Perú era el quinto productor de oro del mundo, pero Colombia es el 19, por ejemplo, y estos países tienen relevancia importante por lo que representa la minería ilegal. El 80% de la producción de oro de Colombia es de origen ilícito y en el caso del Perú el 20%, que no es poca cosa. Y si vamos sumando lo que involucra Brasil o lo que involucra Ecuador o Bolivia, es muchísimo lo que se moviliza haciendo todos estos países amazónicos. Y la vinculación entre los países tampoco es rara, ¿no? Si vemos, por ejemplo, que en la frontera con Ecuador tenemos actividad minera informal e ilegal, ¿no? Oro de origen peruano que sale hacia el Ecuador. En el caso de Colombia se vincula al narcotráfico, ¿no? Igual lo mismo con Brasil, como rutas de narcotráfico, pero también de oro, ¿no? Y con Bolivia está asociado, por ejemplo, a la provisión de insumos, como el mercurio. Cuando el Perú restringió el uso de mercurio, Bolivia, perdón, se convirtió en el segundo país del mundo, después de la India, en importar mercurio, que luego se desplaza al resto del continente. Y también con Chile, donde en la frontera de Perú se acopia oro que luego es llevado hacia Chile y exportado hacia países como Estados Unidos, ¿no? Entonces, este es un caso que estoy llevando actualmente que involucra la zona de frontera con Colombia, pero también cerca a Brasil, ¿no? Donde tenemos áreas de importancia para la diversidad biológica, como el último parque nacional nuestro. Y esta zona, la línea de frontera, ¿no? Presenta, por ejemplo, actividad minera informal, ilegal, con dragas que están prohibidas en el marco jurídico peruano, pero también involucra cultivos ilícitos de coca en esta zona que está destinada a la protección, ¿no? Si vemos las imágenes, podemos ver incluso los centros de procesamiento de hoja de coca. Estas son imágenes que tomamos desde el avión durante una investigación con la Fiscalía Especializada en Materia Ambiental del Perú y que actualmente lleva un proceso penal judicializable. Si vemos esta zona donde está, miren cómo se ha incrementado durante la pandemia la deforestación, donde se asocia narcotráfico que viene con operadores desde Colombia hacia el Perú y que se vincula con la minería ilegal. Y entonces esto nos demuestra que no solamente bastan políticas públicas vinculadas a enfrentar la minería ilegal, sino que necesitamos tener una visión integral y colaborativa entre los países, ¿no? En el marco jurídico peruano tenemos todas estas definiciones: pequeña minería, minería artesanal, grande o en proceso de formalización, o minería ilegal, y todas son, legalmente estos conceptos existen, ¿no? Y les decía que desde el año 2002, es decir, 20 años, tenemos un eterno proceso de formalización minera que ha venido siendo extendida a lo largo de los distintos gobiernos, pero sobre todo con anuencia y con lobby por parte de congresistas elegidos y que representan a los intereses de la minería informal e ilegal, ¿no? Desde el año 2012, 10, se declaró Madre de Dios como una zona especial para abordar la persecución de la minería ilegal, y se prohibió a raíz de esta norma, que yo fui autor, ¿no? El decreto de urgencia 012-2010, que prohíbe el uso de dragas o equipos que operan sobre los cuerpos de agua. Esta medida fue cuestionada, pero llegó hasta nuestro más alto nivel, hacia nuestro Tribunal Constitucional, que es el ente que interpreta nuestra Constitución, y este tribunal confirmó que está prohibido el uso de dragas o equipos sobre cuerpos de agua. Es decir, en el marco jurídico peruano está prohibido el uso de dragas a nivel nacional. Sin embargo, desde el Congreso y en algún momento desde el Poder Ejecutivo, se ha venido insistiendo en volver a permitir algo que ya el máximo órgano que interpreta nuestra Constitución ha señalado que está prohibido, ¿no? Y luego hemos tenido un largo proceso de normas. Yo no quiero ahondar en el detalle de cada una, pero desde el año 2011 hemos tenido diversas normas para enfrentar la minería ilegal. Una de esas es un decreto que incorpora en nuestro Código Penal los delitos de minería ilegal, siendo el delito de minería ilegal el segundo delito de mayor incidencia en el Perú después de la tala ilegal. Tenemos cerca de 26,000 casos de procesos penales a nivel nacional, y aquí hay un esfuerzo importante del Ministerio Público, de la Fiscalía de la Nación, en perseguir y sancionar este delito, ¿no? Voy a pasar básicamente todo ello, ¿no? Y incluso en ese contexto se incluyó a los delitos de minería ilegal para poder investigarlos bajo la ley contra el crimen organizado, pero recuerdo bien que en aquel entonces el lobby de los mineros dentro del Congreso de la República logró modificar esto y excluir a la minería ilegal de la ley contra el crimen organizado. Posteriormente, nuevamente se incluyó a la minería ilegal dentro de la ley de crimen organizado, y tenemos actualmente algunos procesos en curso usando las herramientas que la ley contra el crimen organizado nos da, como usar agentes encubiertos, el uso de interceptación de las comunicaciones, que demuestran diversos intereses y operadores, no solo peruanos, sino extranjeros, realizando esta actividad, y que vincula operaciones hacia China y hacia el Asia. Una de las mayores preocupaciones, sin lugar a dudas, es el uso del mercurio, y el mercurio es uno de los insumos más peligrosos del mundo, ¿no? Entonces, en el Perú no está prohibido el uso de mercurio, sino que se regula el uso para la pequeña minería o la artesanal. Por cada kilo de oro que yo extraiga, debo utilizar hasta 3 kilos de mercurio para poder procesarlos. Y esto nos ha llevado a que desde Bolivia ingrese mercurio de origen ilegal por las fronteras amazónicas del departamento de Madre de Dios y de Puno, y que se distribuye al resto del país, y luego no solamente se quede en el Perú, sino que también se desplaza hacia Ecuador y hacia Colombia, donde el marco jurídico prohíbe el uso de mercurio para la actividad de la minería, dada la implicancia del acuerdo o el convenio internacional sobre mercurio de Minamata. Pero esto nuevamente nos ha llevado a que actualmente nuevamente se amplíe este eterno proceso de formalización que vencía el 2021 y ahora tenemos que este proceso va a ser hasta el año 2024, ¿no? Mientras tanto, hoy en día el gobierno está trabajando una nueva ley para la minería de pequeña escala y he tenido la oportunidad de revisar ese nuevo proyecto de ley y lo curioso es que flexibiliza mucho más la minería informal y facilita la comisión de esta actividad en todo el país, ¿no? Tenemos herramientas para enfrentar la actividad, pero esto requiere, sin lugar a dudas, autoridades convencidas, autoridades que no respondan a los intereses de la minería ilegal, como por ejemplo el uso de los que comercian oro, ¿no? Como mencionó Mayara, muchas veces el oro de origen ilícito se blanquea y aparece con un origen legal, ¿no? Necesitamos mecanismos para que aquellos que comercian oro demuestren verdaderamente que no están sobreproduciendo o produciendo mayores cantidades de oro que luego se comercia como pequeño minero. Tenemos estudios también últimos que demuestran los vínculos de corrupción de los funcionarios de los gobiernos regionales o locales y de gobiernos, de las autoridades del gobierno nacional con la facilitación de los delitos de minería ilegal, que pronto va a ser público, ¿no? Pero también necesitamos herramientas al más alto nivel, como por ejemplo este proceso de incluir los delitos ambientales o los delitos vinculados al ecocidio dentro del Estatuto de Roma y perseguirlo como un crimen internacional. Creo que esto nos va a dar mejores herramientas porque la complacencia, la complicidad de las autoridades en este nivel de facilitar el delito más grave que es la minería ilegal ha llegado a límites insospechados que afecta la vida de diversos líderes indígenas, que afecta la vida de los defensores ambientales y cada día se evidencia el impacto que tiene esta actividad que empieza a asociarse particularmente al narcotráfico y esto genera mucha preocupación. Con esto yo quiero nuevamente agradecer, Livia, por esta invitación. Para mí es un honor poder compartir con ustedes esta información. Muchísimas gracias.
Muchas gracias, César, por tu presentación. Many thanks, César, for your excellent presentation and for showing also the transnational nature of environmental crime, such as illegal mining, and how also the pandemic has acted as an accelerator of the expansion of illegal mining and illegal deforestation in the Amazon basin. We have just learned that our third speaker, Sandra Terran from Ecuador, who was going to present on illegal logging in Ecuador, is unable to join us due to health issues. So we will then have more time to devote for some question and answers. And what I would ask you now is if there are some questions from the floor to our speakers, you can put them in the chat box. But you can also, I think I have to check with our colleague managing the technicalities, if it's possible to raise a hand and to put it or to go on camera. I don't know if this is possible. But in any case, you can start putting some questions that you have in the chat box. In the meantime, I have one question for Mayara and one question for César. So my question for Mayara at the moment is, if there is, you have been talking about the different actors in Brazil, about illegal gold mining. And my question is now from your research that you have been doing through Plataforma CIPO, have you also seen, because you're mainly talking about national actors, what has been your assessment about the international supply chains and gold going to other countries, if you know about other actors involved in that or like facilitating that?
Thank you, Livia. That's a good question. So first, I think Cesar has explored a little bit about the role of neighboring countries and how, for instance, Brazil doesn't produce mercury, has to import, and obviously it's mostly done illegally, including through the border with Venezuela, for instance. So there is a lot of gold extracted in Brazil, for instance, which is sold in Venezuela and for the geographical reasons. But yes, a lot of the gold that Brazil produces go to different countries, not only in neighboring countries, but mostly countries in Europe, in the United States, and this is a major problem. In the case of Brazil, as I said, the main problem is in its origin, because it's so easy to wash the gold or to warm up the gold. Then at the point that it crosses international border, it's already legal. So it's very difficult to punish someone from buying illegal gold if in fact they are buying something that has already been legalized because of how the Brazilian legislation operates. However, having said that, there are things that should be done to make this control more strict from the point of view of those who are buying. Nowadays, there's almost no requirement for them to prove that the gold they're buying comes from legal origin. So I think there's a whole bunch of work that needs to be done in terms of supply chains. And it's worth mentioning that a lot of this gold is not necessarily going, to commercial shops, is going for investments, and in the current scenario in which the finance sector is very weakly regulated, it makes everything even more difficult. So with CIPOL, we've been having, cooperating with organizations in Brazil to try to have a conversation with Brazil's central bank to make the rules internally more strict. But also, I think, as Cesar was saying as well, international cooperation is very important on this issue. So it's very important that prosecutors in Brazil that suspect the gold being exported comes from illegal sources, but not only, prosecutors, sometimes local communities do have this sort of information. It's essential that there is a mechanism that they can feed this information to their counterparts in countries which are buying this gold. At the moment, this doesn't exist. Sometimes, there are some cooperation between prosecutors based on their personal connection, but there's no governance structure to allow this cooperation between law enforcement agents to take place. And I think this is something, that we should definitely be looking into, how to make sure the international organizations, the UN and others, can facilitate this cooperation so that we not end up, buying gold here in Europe, where I currently am now, without knowing where it comes from, and without knowing which environmental, not only environmental violations, but also human rights violation taking place. So yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done to make sure there's greater connection between importing and exporting countries.
Many thanks, Mayara, for this overview. And I think the difficult part is, of course, that that having different actors, sometimes it's always, of course, not obvious who is officially part of some supply chains, which makes it more difficult to address it accordingly. And in the chat, we're having more questions that are now trickling in. We have a couple more minutes. So one question that was posed from PF, he's asking, I would like to know if there is an establishment of chemicals laboratory for the genetics to find out the origin of the gold and how to deal with illegal people involved according to human rights. I don't know, César, si tú quieres tomar esta pregunta.
Sí, Livia.
Si quieres, bueno, la traduzco. Si hay un establecimiento sobre un laboratorio que puede identificar el origen del oro ilegal, y también cómo es que uno aborda el tema de los derechos humanos de las personas que están involucradas en la minería ilegal.
Bueno, en principio existe la posibilidad de identificar y conocer el origen del oro, ¿no? De qué parte del mundo, por ejemplo, proviene, pero actualmente no tenemos por ejemplo, ese tipo de tecnología o avance en la región que, por ejemplo, nos demuestre que el oro proviene de tal cuenca o de tal ecosistema, o particularmente de la Amazonía, ¿no? Y sobre los temas vinculados a la minería ilegal y los derechos humanos, creo que debiera precisar que el marco jurídico, por ejemplo, en el Perú contempla que tengamos el rescate, por así decirlo, de las víctimas de trata, de las personas que son sometidas a esclavitud sexual o a trata para el trabajo forzoso que se realiza en esta actividad. Pero en los diversos operativos no vemos esas condiciones, ¿no? Hemos tenido casos incluso donde han participado diversos operadores y lograron encontrar más de 20 mujeres en estos campamentos mineros que luego no tuvieron ningún nivel de atención o de tratamiento y que luego vuelven a este círculo de trata o de las personas, ¿no? Entonces, particularmente creo que requerimos todavía un enfoque mucho más integral de la actividad, ¿no? Donde los operadores conozcan cómo abordar este tipo de situaciones, que haya un enfoque de cómo se aborda, se trata a este tipo de víctimas que están sometidas de manera permanente al ejercicio de esta actividad.
Muchas gracias, César. And perhaps just to add on the chemical tests that can be done. So mainly in the Amazon basin, the gold is coming from alluvial mining. So Peru actually is doing some tests because alluvial mining or gold coming from alluvial mining has less of a purity. And so that's why it's possible to track it if it's coming from hard rock mining or if it's coming from alluvial mining. So Peru is doing these tests to track the origin of the gold. We're having here one question that is, Mayara, that I think that could be for you. It's about illegal logging. It's from Michael, that he says, understanding that illegal logging unfortunately will not be covered, I would like to ask a question related thereto in any case, if any of the panelists are able to answer. Is illegal logging mostly opportunistic, performed by locals trying to make a living, or is it mostly the result of involvement of organized crime groups in facilitating trade in hardwood, charcoal? Is the charcoal trade in particular a notable problem from an environmental health and or organized crime perspective? Is it mainly locally confined, or is there a transnational aspect to it? It's a bit of a complex illegal logging question, and please feel free to just take out the elements that you're comfortable to respond to.
Yeah, sure. Well, in terms of who is behind this, I think it's to an extent similar to gold, in the sense that you have local populations engaged in the extraction in the illegal extraction of timber. However, as in the case of gold, they are not necessarily and almost always not the ones who actually profit from that. In fact, they are mostly exploited, working in very dire conditions, being paid a minimum when they are paid at all. So behind those people who are actually conducting the work, you have an organized network that is actually profiting for it. And then we are talking about, sometimes companies, large companies operating legally, and in the sense that they are legally registered, but they are buying and financing those sort of illicit activities. So no, it's not, the core of the problem is not, people in poor conditions conducting this crime. Is actually those profiting for that. But obviously, if you don't have income, job opportunities, it's very difficult to make people not see this work as advantageous. So I'd say in that sense, quite similar to the gold sector. In the case of Brazil, illegal logging, the chain is a bit more controlled than the gold chain. You have some permits that you're able to track and see where the origin comes from. Of course, this, it is exposed to fraud and illegalities, but at least you have a better mechanism to trace back the origin. And whether it's a national or an international problem, I think most of the timber is consumed internally, but there is a significant amount that goes to other countries. And again, here where the role of international cooperation is essential, because sometimes what happens is that, you know, we know for a fact that the certain shipments of wood, this wood comes from illegal sources, and they arrive in Belgium, and you know for a fact that they are illegal, but with the lack of any structure to inform authorities in Belgium, the timber ends up entering the market there. And sometimes even when they don't, what happens is a country refuses to accept the timber because there is, you know, some evidence that the origin is illegal. The ship just turns around and go to a different country with weaker legislation. So that's why that's why I keep saying, like, international cooperation is really essential if we really want to tackle the problem.
Thank you very much, Mayara. We're running a little bit out of time, but there is one more question that we can take from Yoshka. Hello, Yoshka. He's also a network member, and his question to Cesar is, to what extent do you think the authorities in Bolivia sanction illicit flows of mercury to Peru and illicit outflows of gold to Bolivia? You can read the full question in the chat box. I'm going to give the floor to Cesar for the last question. Y por favor, hacer un resumen breve porque ya tenemos que cerrar. Gracias.
Sí. Gracias. Bueno, en principio yo diría que con mucha pena, ¿no? El gobierno de Bolivia permite el ingreso de mercurio sabiendo que no van a usarlo todo, ¿no? Si uno ve los niveles de importación de mercurio en Bolivia se incrementaron de manera voluminosa, ¿no? Superaron 5 veces más el consumo nacional. Y proviene, por ejemplo, de México, ¿no? Dado la entrada en vigencia del convenio de Minamata sobre mercurio, señala que los países pueden señalar simplemente su negativa al ingreso al mercurio. Lo que ha hecho el gobierno boliviano es permitir el ingreso de mercurio hacia Bolivia, sabiendo que ellos no van a consumir todo eso, y a partir de ese ingreso se desplaza por la frontera. En el Perú, el uso de mercurio está regulado, pero también no tenemos mecanismos de transparencia para saber quiénes son los que usan, ¿no? En el último tiempo hemos visto que ya no solamente está ingresando mercurio desde México, sino también desde el Japón, que llama bastante la atención siendo un país que impulsó la adopción del convenio de Minamata. Entonces, creo que aquí requiere una respuesta internacional. Si no hay una respuesta internacional, difícilmente vamos a poder hacer, dado que nuestras fronteras son tan amplias, ¿no? Y no existen verdaderamente presencia para poder controlar este flujo de este insumo particular. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, César. And as my colleague was putting, we would love to have more time for questions, but unfortunately we have to come to an end. So please send us an email if you have any further questions, or if you would like to be in touch or to be connected with one of the presenters, and we're very happy to connect you. Before we're coming to an end, and again, I would like to thank Mayara Folli and Cesar Ipenza for your excellent presentations and trying to give an overview of the challenges in the Brazilian and Peruvian Amazon basin. I would like to hand over to my dear colleague from the Peruvian Permanent Mission to the UN, Carlos Sanchez Aguila, who is Minister Counselor and alternate representative of the Permanent Mission.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, thank you very much, Lydia, and thank you very much also the panelists for its very comprehensive and rich presentations about this topic of environmental crimes in the Amazon basin. I believe we all, the present here, learned very much about this very complex material. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of the people that are joining today by this platform. I would like to start saying that environmental crimes are widely recognized as among some of the most critical and profitable forms of transnational criminal activity, considered the fourth largest criminal area in the world after drugs, counterfeits, and human trafficking, with significant revenues for criminal organizations estimated in billions of dollars annually, according to several reports prepared by many relevant international organizations, such as the United Nations Environment Program, the World Bank, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Environmental crimes also deprive source countries of precious natural resources, drive countless species towards extinction, increase the risk of zoonotic disease transmission, fuel corruption and instability, and contribute to climate change. These types of crimes have previously not been regarded as a priority in many countries and international organizations as a result of a lack of appropriate and proportional national and international response. 5 areas are recognized as the most prevalent environmental crimes globally: wildlife crime, illegal logging, illegal fishing, pollution crimes, and illegal mining, which was the topic of our today presentation. I would like now, before this very brief introduction, I would like to try to synthesize the most relevant topic presented by our distinguished panelists today. First, the links between organized crime and environmental crime are very complex. Environmental crimes are correlated also with other activities, illegal activities such as drug trafficking, trafficking in arms and ammunition, trafficking in human beings, sexual exploitation, forced labor, extortion, money laundering, cybercrime, oil smuggling, and illegal logging. Lack of control and impunity make the Amazon Basin especially vulnerable to the growth of this type of organized crime. Organized crime groups are intertwined with public and legal institutions, fostering corruption and financial crimes. Particularly, illegal mining has become a significant source of revenue for organized criminal groups. Low state presence plus organized crime presence present challenges for development, governance, and security in our region, exacerbating poverty, social inequality, and violence, and increasing violence in local, rural, and indigenous communities. Criminal groups and networks contribute to deforestation, contamination of soils, air, and water, as well as the violation to human rights and rights of the indigenous communities. Finally, systemic corruption in institutions, corruption of local, national, and international actors, and money laundering contribute to the perpetuation of this problem. Considering this complex scenario, in the recent years, many international efforts have been made in order to address this new expression of organized crime. 3 resolutions has been adopted until now on different organizations. The first one was adopted by the Conference of State Parties of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption in the year 2020 in the 8th session of the COSP. The second one was adopted by the Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Crime on the year 2022. And the last one was adopted past year by the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice on its 30th session. Peru also, at a national level, has made efforts to face crimes that affect the environment and has reinforced its institutional and legal framework to prevent and combat this matter, particularly with the creation of specialized attorneys and the development of new laws to address this expression of organized crime. Finally, for this 31st session of the CCPCJ, Peru is sponsoring, alongside with Angola, Kenya, Gabon, Malawi, and Ecuador, a resolution for strengthening the international legal framework to prevent and combat illicit trafficking in wildlife, as an expression of our compromise to address properly the thematic related to the crimes that affect the environment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for your closing remarks and also saying what, from the Peruvian perspective, is of imminent importance, how to address this in the near future, and why it's there is a pressing need to do that as soon as possible. I would like to thank you. We're now already over the time. And I'm sorry that we could not answer all your questions. As mentioned, please feel free to reach out to us in case you have any other questions. I would like to again thank you very, very much for your attention, for dialing in, for your interest in that topic. It's very important that it is addressing not only environment, but also social and human rights for a lot of communities also outside of Latin America. So this is something that we really have to act on. And of course, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to our partners, as I was saying before, Adam from the UN University, Mayara Folli from the Plataforma CIPO, and Carlos from the Permanent Mission of Peru, and of course to our presenters, Mayara and Cesar, for your excellent presentations and giving us an overview of the challenges in that region. Thank you very much again. Please let us know. You can find us on the website, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much.